Hello all, I'm going to be sharing my Whatnot sales from June 13th. I had an antique and vintage book show including old magazines. I sold 19 items to 7 buyers in an hour for $92. Starting off with this bundle from a new buyer who purchased 6 items for $26.34 plus shipping. Also, for those who don't know what Whatnot is, it's an app where you can go into people's live shows and bid on their items that they show throughout their show. So in this bundle, this buyer purchased this antique People's Home magazine from 1914 for $5. I purchased a bunch of these magazines in bulk for $10 at a yard sale last summer. She purchased an antique Henry Longfellow Holmes book for $6, which came from a yard sale I went to a few months ago. I purchased a ton of antique books for $50. She also purchased a sketch maps of France book from 1928 for $3, which I also got from the same yard sale a few months ago. She purchased this vintage Bear Stories book from 1957 for $4. This book came from either an auction that I won or from my supplier about a year ago. She also purchased this Saturday Evening Post magazine from 1945 for $7, which came from that same yard sale I went to last summer. And last, she purchased this antique music book from 1899 for $7, which I won from an auction last year for a really good deal with a bunch of other antique books. Next, I have another bundle from a repeat buyer of mine who purchased 7 books for $31. The first item in this bundle was a Little Journeys to the Homes of Great Scientists from 1928, which sold for $7. She also purchased one about great businessmen from 1928 for $6. These books came from either my supplier last year or from an auction that I won. She also purchased this Hans Brinker or the Silver Skates book for $4, which came from the yard sale I went to a few months ago. This Aesop Fables book from 1939 sold for $4 as well, which came from another yard sale a few months ago where I purchased 35 vintage books for $50. She also purchased the works of Robert Louis Stevenson for $5. This vintage Paul Revere booklet for $2, which came from the yard sale from a few months ago where I purchased a bunch of books and ephemera for $50. And last, she purchased this vintage golden book from 1980 for $2, which came from a yard sale that I got for, I believe, 50 cents. A different buyer purchased this indoor studies book from 1895 for $7. This book came from my supplier last year, about a year ago, which I purchased in bulk. Another buyer purchased this children's book from 1909 for $7, which came from a library sale last summer for around $2. Another buyer purchased this antique geometry school book from 1898 for $6. This book came from an auction last year as well. A different buyer purchased this vintage golden book from 1957 for $4, which came from a yard sale a few months ago that I purchased for 50 cents. Another repeat buyer of mine purchased 2 books for me. The first was this Captain the Great book from 1965, which sold for $3. This book may have came from the yard sale I went to a few months ago as well. She also purchased the Baby's Prayer book for $3, which came from that same yard sale I went to a few months ago. The total of her bundle was $5. So in total, my sales came up to $92. Minus Whatnot fees, I took home $74.66, which I was able to cash out the same day. If you sold 1,000 sales in the past, you're eligible to cash out your sales the same day after you print out your shipping labels, which is awesome. For those who are interested in joining Whatnot, you can scan my QR code to join. Thank you for watching. Like and follow to see more videos like this.